Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Mariam Hassan, Monaco Hydrogen Alliance's Program Manager, and we are all delighted to have you here and to be hosting this webinar in partnership with our dear friends from CoMotion. Today, we'll be focusing on the need for scaling hydrogen infrastructure specifically and pave the way for a green hydrogen economy in mobility. Personally, this being Monaco Hydrogen Alliance's first webinar is a very, very exciting thing. And for those of you who don't know, the Monaco Hydrogen Alliance is a nonprofit foundation dedicated for promoting sustainable land, air, and sea transportation through exclusive use of renewable hydrogen. We do so by featuring and accelerating emerging solutions, facilitating cross-sector adoption of renewable hydrogen innovations as well as developments. And just for you all to know, before I hand it over to today's moderator, I'd like to inform everyone who's might not be aware that we are currently gearing up for upcoming events, both with Alliance and CoMotion, in order to focus more exclusively and more deeply on renewable hydrogen. From our side, we are excited to host our annual gathering, the Monaco Hydrogen Forum, taking place on the 27th and the 28th of November this year. CoMotion, on the other hand, is bringing another exciting edition of its Motivate Vancouver event, this 27th and 28th, as well as their flagship event, CoMotion LA, on 14th and 16th of November. Please make sure to check out our websites for more exciting news to come. Now, without further ado, I'm honored to invite to the stage our moderator, Gareth McNaughton, and his panel. Gareth, please, over to you.
Hello. Hello, my name is Gareth McNaughton, and I'm very grateful to be here with a lovely panel of distinguished guests to address the question of scaling hydrogen. So I work for EIT Urban Mobility. So this is a topic that's very dear to our heart. The transport and logistics sector for Europe is about 23% of our greenhouse gases. And for us, we have been encouraged by the Commission and our political leaders to add hydrogen and hydrogen mobility to our portfolio of projects. So this is very opportune that we could work together. So today we're going to have three special guests from around the world, and they're going to be Mark Levine, Michael Perschke, and Chloe Zaida. Now, just to give you a quick heads up of who these people are and what their experience is. So Mark Levine is the founder and president of Hydrogen Impact Partners. So long innovation history. Hi, Mark. Since 1994, working on integrated web development and expanding out of Canada globally. So since 2007, he's been working on his exclamation activities and brand, which is all about working with profit with purpose, which is a way to make money and still be morally comfortable with what you're doing. So hydrogen is a great opportunity. And specifically, he's now got his Hydrogen Impact Partners program. And I think that the focus is on maritime initially, if that's right, Mark. And you'll be implementing your Sunrise project, which is actually going to be one of your first in France in 2024. So we'll be excited to hear about that. We also today have Michael Perschke. So Michael is the chair and CEO of Quantron out of Germany. Lots of experience in mobility with years of experience working with large companies that you and I would know, Audi, Mercedes-Benz, Mitsubishi. And his offering that's now coming from Quantron is very interesting to see. It's full service, and he'll be updating how that could be done to help people get onto the hydrogen ladder. And last but certainly not least, we'll be talking to Chloe. So Chloe is the general manager, and there's two things interesting. She's both working on yachts, and so there's a maritime theme there too, but with extensive experience and joy for a family business in sailing and yachting, and combining that with her desire to have sustainability and a green solution that we can all use. So she'll be bringing her wisdom and knowledge there. And importantly, in our bridge to infrastructure, she'd done something called EFRA, which she's going to talk about a little bit, that'll help us understand how she fixed some of the gaps that she found when she was trying to develop hydrogen. So without further ado, we're going to give 5 minutes of introduction to each of the panelists in the order of Mark, Michael, and Chloe. Okay, so with that, Mark, I hand over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Gareth, for the introduction. So as Gareth mentioned, I've been a serial entrepreneur, creating business models in various different things from marketing and finance, and now with a profit with purpose angle. I think what's interesting about the model is we come in and we see how we can disrupt or change or put together new business models to accelerate a new opportunity or a new sector. So about 5 years ago, started to really get serious in looking at the opportunities around hydrogen. It actually started from the desire for maritime and love of the ocean to see how we can make more cleaner yachting and so on. It really got pulled into what was happening. There were some really interesting emerging projects in France at the time. And the challenge was, how do we kickstart this? How do we accelerate the transition to some of these interesting things that aren't simply prototypes or one-off opportunities? And I think when we looked around at the business model, it really starts with production. And to be honest, without green hydrogen, it's hard to say to have companies and businesses and opportunities committing to new projects because, to be honest, it's a little more complicated. It's more expensive at the beginning. But if you do have that green fuel at the centerpiece of it, it gives an opportunity for people to engage and start things happening. So I think the important thing to understand is that how do you solve that bit of a chicken and the egg problem? And I think a lot of the larger projects and some of the sort of multiple 100 megawatt and larger projects, they have a challenge because they're trying to simultaneously get enough demand and at the same time have the supply coming online. So what we did is took the initiative with all of the partners in our region, and I'll talk a bit more about the ecosystem. Second was to take that initiative and say, well, let's start with production. Let's really get that going. Even though we don't have a solid offtake or solid partnerships, we need to start somewhere. And that was the birth, if you want, of the Sunrise idea as part of the Innovar ecosystem to say that now we have some green hydrogen. It really will stimulate the economy and have that. So we started that and we're under production. The second point, and I think I've touched on this, and it's glad that Chloe's online, so she'll talk more about it as well, is it's not just about production. I think that's interesting, but to have production and offtake done simultaneously, impossible in an emerging market, but it's about the ecosystem that you build around it. So as I mentioned, Sunrise is at the center of an amazing ecosystem of partners and players called Innovar, Hydrogen in the VAR, based on maritime, but also mobility, light mobility and instant energy and partnership. And I think what's interesting about building an ecosystem, at the beginning, it's really tough. And we can talk probably in the second half hour more about all the challenges, but, we're figuring that out, from production to distribution to usage, there's a lot to learn and so on. But once you start figuring out with an ecosystem, it becomes a showcase for the world to be able to say, this is how we do it. This is our learnings, and this is how we can replicate an ecosystem. But not just replicate it, and this is what we're trying to do at Hydrogen Impact Partners and our partners is say, okay, well, now we have production, but we also have these 3 or 4 really amazing partners with respect to usage that we can come to a new sector, a new opportunity, and a new location and say, not only can we build an ecosystem with your support locally, but we can actually be economically viable day one. Obviously, we need to grow it and to make profit, but day one with the production and a few of the different partners that show a mix of different usages, it really allows you to have something that can demonstrate a whole ecosystem that makes sense. And from there, you can grow more taxis on the road, more light mobility, more buses, more boats, more infrastructure for distribution of the hydrogen. But I think it's key is to accelerate that from day one of production to something that's really growing and viable is to start with an ecosystem of partners. So to recap that, and I'll pass it off to you, Michael, and then Chloe, is I think for us, it's production first. People need to take a bit of a risk. You can't just wait for, having 100% of your hydrogen sold before you're going to, green light the project. So I think that's important, is take a bit of risk on production and get that out in the market, but do that with a strong ecosystem of partners. And the more, the better, that are really working together as a unit to not only have a viable ecosystem that's economically viable, but starts to solve those problems together and challenges that you learn about distribution and things that just aren't off-the-shelf products and available like they are today in traditional, diesel and gasoline. So I'll stop there and pass it off to Michael.
Hey, Michael, I think you're on mute. Yeah. I think you might still be on mute, Michael.
So now it should be working, right? While we learned that in Corona times, it still sometimes doesn't work. I think, Mark, you kind of in a way stole already all my thunder, because you described perfectly an hydrogen ecosystem. But maybe just one sentence, what is Quantron doing? We come actually from the world of retrofitment. So we were taking initially diesel trucks off the road and initially fitting them with electric drivetrains. Let's say our proof of concept and our masterpieces have been specifically waste collection trucks. Then we've been contacted by IKEA, because IKEA wanted a last mile vehicle, and they were initially focused on hydrogen because they said, what we search for doesn't exist electric, so we need hydrogen. Well, we proved them actually wrong at that point, because the use case was up to 100 kilometers range and so on. And so we actually delivered an electric version to them. However, in the journey we started, we got contacted by Bala Power. They saw what we did on the retrofitment, and they wanted to enter the European market, not through the traditional slow-moving OEMs. So we had some time of negotiation, but finally we concluded what we call the joint development agreement, and also an investment agreement. So Bala Power, the oldest fuel cell company in the world, is an investor in Quantron. And when we started developing the hydrogen vehicles, we came to the obvious thing, Mark, which you mentioned. Where's the chicken, where's the egg? Because it's great to have hydrogen vehicles, but without hydrogen supply, it won't work. And something Elon Musk figured out a long time ago for electric when he developed the Tesla Model S. So Quantron emerged basically through a refitment journey and moving into hydrogen fuel cells. We have to solve for our customer a one-stop shop solution. We're not only providing hardware, we're also now providing the ecosystem. And like you said, Mark, nicely, I think all of us, one way or the other, stumbled into hydrogen and realized it's not one piece of a puzzle. It's not two pieces of a puzzle. If you want to create a proper working hydrogen ecosystem model, production, supply chain, dispensing, trucks, usage, and close the loop, you talk about 10 to 15 pieces of a puzzle probably to really fix it. And that's what we're doing today for our clients. Our ultimate goal is by 25, 26 to offer our clients close to TCO price parity by using hydrogen trucks compared to diesel trucks. That's a humongous undertaking. We're not doing it ourselves. We have today up to 50 partners, alone 5 investors, which come from oil and gas, which come from high pressure pumping, which come from fuel cells. Because at the end of the day, we're building an OEM agnostic ecosystem where initially Quantron will supply our own trucks because we are one of the first movers. And I'm proud to say currently on the truck side, probably we're the European champion in regards of range. And we're the only truck manufacturer to deploy fuel cells without tanks as a backpack. So we have no concession on payload. We have no concession on range. We have no concession on trailer lengths. Our truck looks as a diesel truck. And what we're realizing, and that's why we also joined the Monaco Hydrogen Alliance, if we want to succeed with our joint mission on making hydrogen successful, it requires a lot of heavy lifting. It requires the acceptance of the technology. It requires the implementation of production and dispensing technology all over Europe. Our trucks drive all over Europe, so you need to give a commitment for a price and availability between Lisbon and Oslo and between Istanbul and Amsterdam. It's a little bit easier with buses because we have a defined area where we operate. Trucks make life much more challenging. And that's where we believe very, very strongly, Mark and Chloe, that's an example, very strongly in partnerships. Hydrogen, it's in infant stages. It's where electric mobility was back in 2000, 2005. So we are 10 to 15 years behind in regards of deploying the technology really for mobility. But behind doesn't mean bad. It means we have a lot of lessons learned from electrification. And hydrogen is another energy carrier. But I believe strongly that with the last article in the FT on the grid limitations, hydrogen is urgently needed because electrification alone is not manageable for decarbonization because we are facing grid limitations, transformer limitations, availability of electricity. And you mentioned the example of Toyota or Hyundai. If we compare electric as the milk, hydrogen is the cheese. We can use the cheese at any given point of time and we can transport it easily, we can store it easily, something which doesn't exist for electric in the same manner. And we are not dogmatic. We have done a nice white paper. I think, Garrett, you had a look at it. We very strongly believe the market, the regional situation of energy, the availability of green energy, and the availability of infrastructure will decide where hydrogen makes more sense and where electric makes more sense. So a good friend of mine, Roger Atkins, once said, it's not an either or. The answer is it depends. It very strongly depends, and that's what we're advocating. We are not dogmatic. We are not the Elon Musk of hydrogen. We believe our clients and us will find the right solution. And if electric is the right solution, amazing. But if electric comes to its limits, then clearly hydrogen is a very viable alternative. That's this from my state, and I'm excited, Chloe, to listen to your opinion and objectives.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael. Thanks, Garrett, and thanks, Mariam, for the invitation. That's an honor to have the opportunity to speak here. Just firstly, maybe I'm the French of the team today, so excuse my English. That's it. Okay, now we can keep going. So I'm the founder and the president of Hynova. So firstly, maybe a bit of my history, because the story began like that. I'm a boat captain and I just had a big dream. I wanted to keep cruising and respect the planet and the environment at the same time. And also I'm a businesswoman, so I also need to have a business with a reality after. So that's why we needed to have performance and range. So that's why, and actually, Michael, your words was like really resonating with me, because I really have the same view. I mean, I'm not dogmatic. I said that maybe 2 hours before to Garrett. It's depending the energy chosen. It's depending if it's relevant. I mean, it's depending the use case. If you have a short distance to make, if you have a small boat and light boat, for example, you don't need maybe to have hydrogen. Battery can be enough. In my case, my market, it's between 8 meters and 24 meters yachting, boating. I mean, it's middle, it's then hybrid also, hybrid markets. After 10 meters, you need to have hydrogen to be relevant, because I understood something. People are willing to go in zero emission solution, but they don't want to make any compromise on their comfort. I mean, performance, design. We are in yachting actually, so for sure we are in luxury. So that's really important to have that in mind. So just to come back in my story, 2 years ago, we created with Hynova the first hydrogen power boat, leisure boat. I mean, it's not a prototype. It's a real boat with papers and homologation. So it was the first one like that. So we did a show between Marseille and Monaco. Marc can tell you about that also, because he came for this tour. So the goal was to showcase and to show that the technology was mature. Because in this industry, everyone thought that it was not ready, it was not possible to do it. And we did it, actually, and we showcased that. And also, we tried different solutions of refueling. So most of the time, it was by truck. And the point, for me, it's really important to notice that there is a world in land and you have a world in port. So port is the public area. So that's completely different. You need to have all the authorization. People are so scared about what you are doing. So it was a big experience to do that for 2 months from Marseille to Monaco. We did like 11 stops in different ports. We did the refueling, and we created also some precedent, because it was the first time for all the ports. It was the first time to make a refueling of the boat. And at this stage, what I learned, it's how crazy it is to make the refueling by truck. Actually, I just understand how important is it to control all the value chain. You talk about that before, Marc and Michael, from production to usage. And with the transport and the refueling and dispensing, it's pretty hard supply chain. So at this stage, I just understood that if I want to sell boats, I just need to control from A to Z, So that's why I decided to be associate in EFIRA project. So EFIRA just created the first maritime zero emission ecosystem from the boat with the hydrogen power boat, for sure. We produce the green hydrogen on site. So it's in a 20-feet container. We refuel the boat on site, and we had created a membership, a community. So that's mean we make it simple. So for people now, hydrogen, it's so complicated. How to make the hydrogen? Is it a hydrogen? How does it cost? We completely cancel with this equation all the complexity with hydrogen. People just pay for a membership. They have hydrogen unlimited, all the exclusive services, for sure. We are in yachting, so it's different. Actually, maybe 2 weeks ago, in the press, we have an article and saying it's the Tesla of the sea. It's kind of. You were talking about Elon Musk. I'm not the Elon Musk of the boat, for sure, and the hydrogen boat, but it's a bit the model. It's the closed ecosystem, because if we have to wait to have a refueling station in the port, everywhere in the Mediterranean Sea to start, and all around the world, for sure, I'm not gonna be here anymore in maybe 2 years. So that's why I decided to act now. So the point for me, it's really to start from somewhere. So, and actually we're gonna have the first station and ecosystem next year in Marseille, and mostly because we have the Olympic Games next year, and we have a partnership with Toyota for that. So we're gonna see the boat next year in Paris and Marseille. So it's an amazing opportunity for us. So the point for me is just if you want to start now with hydrogen boats in marina and port, you need to control all the value chain, even though it's not working. Sorry, but I'm a bit pragmatic, but it's reality. I live that everywhere, so, and every day.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to Marc, Michael, and Chloe. This was just their opening statement. So what we have a chance to do is now to be chatting among ourselves. And of course, the audience, you're welcome to put questions into, you'll see here the Q&A. And so if you have questions about the experiences of our partners, of course. But what we would like to start with is just a quick, our infrastructure and mobility is key for us, okay? What we know is the chicken and egg is real. Local authorities will not invest. And then if you have high production costs, and then equipment's too expensive, and then they don't have enough demand, and so why would I have invested? And currently, EITR mobility is in the middle of many of these discussions. And you'll see behind me an interesting image. So this image is from my hometown in Aberdeen, where the city, and we've discussed, it might have been a guilt complex from all that petrol that we've pumped out over the last 40 years. They invested in a long-term hydrogen plan that at the time people laughed at. Many of the technologies they needed were not quite there yet. But now what we have in the city is buses, microbuses, social work departments, the lightweight public sector cleaning vans, the large garbage vans. All of that is in hydrogen, and you'll notice the livery, it's all the same. And you have a massive, in a city of 200,000 people, you see them everywhere. My granny's been getting on these buses for 10 years. And that, when I came to this organization, when the commission asked us to act on this, what was my immediate reaction? I was like, yeah, sure. I didn't know how difficult this was. So Chloe, Mark, I didn't, because I had that experience. I think that's where we are. We're at the point of moving forward, but we need to get the people to experience, much as Chloe did, to get the boat out and make them believe it's possible. And I think that's an exciting place. And the fact that we now have the Monaco Hydrogen Alliance stepping up as one of the many organizations that we've got to push this is wonderful. So quick question for you. Europe has acted with the Alternative Fuels Directive. So we now have guidance on, we will be implementing both charging stations and fast charging stations on our motorways, and we'll also be able to look for hydrogen recharging. Do you think we're doing enough on that? Is that announcement and the allocation of budgets enough? Or what do you think we could do more to provide infrastructure? If you could give one recommendation for the Commission and government for hydrogen infrastructure, what do you think that should be? So I'll start with Michael. Oh, we've got the whole.
I don't know if I speak for Mark and Chloe, but our experience on the trucking side, where we are accessing mainly public infrastructure, fueling points and whatsoever, is one of the bottlenecks today is still the approval processes. It takes a long time, whether it's the electrolyzer, whether it's the dispensing station. Approval processes are today still a nightmare to scale up fast infrastructure, because Chloe said, you know, if you want a maritime and you have a hydrogen boat and you go from Nice to Monaco, you want to make sure you can fuel there, right? Remember, for a truck, it's even more critical, because if a truck cannot fuel, maybe tomorrow your grocery stuff doesn't arrive because it's or the fueling pump is damaged, which does happen even in the electric world still. So we need more ubiquitous infrastructure. Yeah, okay. It cannot be that you have range anxiety because of non-available infrastructure. Mass adoption, as we saw with electric, happens only with the infrastructure leading and then the vehicles follow. So I think speeding up approvals and making the subsidies easily available for the players who are serious about creating a serious business.
Okay. That's great. And you know, I'm taking notes. So when I'm in Brussels on the 26th and 27th, I won't name you, Michael, but I'll definitely put this forward, okay? So Mark, what's one thing that we could do to speed up mobility infrastructure for hydrogen?
No, it's an excellent question. I think you need to go on two tracks. I think it's great to have ambition, as Michael is saying, is having the ability to go anywhere in Europe and every station and so on. But I think it's unrealistic because it's going to take so long for that infrastructure that nothing gets started. You know, as Chloe mentioned, for the summer tour, it was amazing because we had an opportunity. I had amazing opportunity to be on the boat. And at me, it was like, wow, it's silent, it's amazing, it's something that you can dream about. And I think if I can give a suggestion in infrastructure, it's to start with small ecosystem. I mentioned that again, but what Chloe was saying is we have an approach called hydrogen as a service. I think what Chloe said and the government needs to understand is it's not one piece of the mix everywhere. My advice would be a bit different. Instead of having, we have filling stations everywhere across the Côte d'Azur, along all the auto routes, is to say, no, what would make sense is let's focus on one very specific area for one solution, whether that's boating, light mobility, and complete it as a service from A to Z as exactly as the complete unit as a service, and not subsidize just infrastructure, but say what we really need is we need to have a complete, whether that's a taxi solution, and then you have a complete solution for the taxi drivers, which is the production. Where's the hydrogen coming from? Where am I getting my taxi? Who are the companies that are leasing it? Where's the financing coming from? Because it's a taxi driver, what's the UK? So, literally to the point where any taxi driver, and they're doing a bit of this in Denmark and so on, is saying, well, what we have is a whole infrastructure for usage, taxis, boats, whatever that is. You have for one single price, everything included, everything done. Hydrogen as a service is what we're calling that. I think if the government can focus on small things like that actually work in an ecosystem that replicable, is as powerful as saying we can have something that is completely all across France, or for that matter, all across Europe, because I think it's that time that will take along. I think we can learn from that is that, my first crossover with hydrogen was back in 2000. There's a company called Hydrogenics, which went public in Canada, and there was a whole bunch of hype around hydrogen at the time. But what it was about individual cars with 1,000 hydrogen stations down the west coast of Canada and the United States. Real project, and actually where Toyota created their first hydrogen car. This is, 98, 99, 2000. And that all fell apart because the ambition of having that then with electric and a whole thousands of reasons, which you don't need to go into, it fell apart. Where we're targeting now is small solutions that are in a closed environment, whether that's trucks coming back to home, boats coming back to port. That's something that you can really show huge success on as a government, funding that infrastructure and then replicate that in multiple places, as opposed to saying it's an all or nothing. If we don't have 500 stations, no one starts.
Chloe, what's your idea of what we could do? One thing that you would give back to Brussels or our government to help them with infrastructure?
Yeah, so, Gareth, I think I'm really optimistic, but maybe 3 years ago, I was more than now. Now I'm a bit more pragmatic because I experienced all these things. And, there is a huge, huge gap between politics speeches with the transition, energetical transition, and blah, 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 and the reality. And, the reality for me, it's the administration. So firstly, the point for me, it's the regulation. How to bring hydrogen in a boat, how to bring hydrogen in a port, how to have all the authorization. I said that because I already lived this point. And I'm one of the only one with this experience because I experienced that in real life. And that's really the point. There is a huge gap. Even now for the Olympic Games, we are talking a lot with the Maritime Authority and stuff. They are not ready, they protect their career. I want to be honest, I'm a bit cash, sorry, but it's like that. They want to preserve, so they don't want to stamp the paper, because they take the responsibility. So at this stage for me, I took my responsibility. I think I did the most that I can do in this story, but now we need help. And when I said I need help, no, it's not true, actually. I'm not asking for help. I'm just asking to stop making barrier. That's different.
Okay, so let's stop annoying you and let you do your
let
thing.
me do my job
Okay.
and just say, okay, we are doing that with you and not stopping me. That's my real life. Every day, it's not, you can't do that. You can't do that. Why? Why?
Because it's not been done before. They don't have a framework.
Yeah.
Okay, so that organizational inertia and the systemic inertia. I mean, systemic change is the worst type of change. You need to have 12 actors at least agreeing on the vision, and then you've got the legal framework. So, comment. I just want to let you know that this is a very interesting angle that you're taking, okay? Because we have had Hydrogen Valley program in the EU, and it's massive. This is a challenge, and it's almost like in contrast to what you're saying. And I've read some of the International Energy Authority reports saying that perhaps we need to look more at what you're suggesting. We need points of hydrogen use and demand. And when you have points of hydrogen use, then a town 40 miles away, a logistics center where there's 6 centers, and there's IKEA and there's Carrefour. And when you start to get these points of use, then it makes sense to invest in pipeline and to actually share. Instead of saying, I'm going to build 300 kilometers of pipeline and somehow it's going to get used. Perhaps we're going to see both of these happening, because the juggernaut of government and European investment is quite big. But these point to point, seeing people making points of light that can connect the valley and justify the expense. Very interesting, and I think it's something we'll be having to discuss a little bit. Just so you know, on money, you've mentioned all money. I'll let you know that the EU Invest programme, which allows infrastructure from DG Move, which is Directorate General Move, I think less than 50% of their money was actually allocated because of quite cumbersome processes and documents. But it does give us all hope, because there is money that's unused. We might just need to be a little bit cleverer in how to come together in your ecosystems. And as an ecosystem, you will have far more leverage. So that's wonderful to see. I think strong points here. Quick question. We open to the audience for questions. And right now in the question and answer, I'm not seeing any. If it's possible, we would love to see some questions from the audience in there. Please feel free to type away. The other points I just wanted to check in here is, do you currently think that what you're doing in France, because it seems to be quite French and German, are you seeing large demand for what are local authorities politically aware of what you're doing and willing to support you? Or do you think you're battling against a lack of knowledge and understanding of politicians, local elected officials? Are they aware of what's happening, or do we need more active promotion to educate our leaders? What would you say are our issues? Maybe, Mark, you've got a better situation in Canada, but are our political leaders capable to understand the challenges, or not yet? Mark, what's your point of that?
I'm actually, where we're based, Sunrise is based in France, so I'll speak
France,
to that.
okay.
I actually think it's I think there's good understanding. There's been a lot of excellent conferences and so on. I think, there are good programs, and they're continuing for funding.
Okay.
So I think the government's not bad about that. I think the issue with the government isn't necessarily on their understanding or the desire to put forward funding opportunities. It's in the processes for approval and the length of those funding opportunities, and the challenges to get from, the quest for funding to approval to get that money done. It's much too long. So I think that can be accelerated in that. The education is starting, and desire is there. But I think it's also to work hand in hand with the businesses, because even with the government funding, at the end of the day, it's 30, 40, 50% max of the purchase. So unless you're doing something that's completely government, that's being funding, and then a municipality who's going to take the buses and do those projects, which I think are great. But even that's not really going to accelerate significantly the hydrogen economy, because every business is going to look at that. Well, they only did it, they spent a fortune to do it because they need to show that they're doing something. I think what really works well, and recap, is the government has a good understanding, the funding's there, but they need to get a better partnership with the usage and the companies that are willing to get involved with that are the other half of the funding mix. And I think they can't work separately. You can't have projects that people apply to and then come up with money and then go out and share find the customers. In that whole process, that's taking way too long and it's not coherent. So I think that's important for me, is to speed up the processes. From every government can do that, but maybe that can even be sped up if you have more engagement at the early stages between government and private enterprise. Okay, no, great idea. So we have a question that came in from the audience, and we want to try and do. So there have been multiple cycles over the last few decades of H2 demand, but all appeared to collapse on the cycles of oil prices, increases and declines. So how can you create a non-governmental market-based driving force to make infrastructure? That's a big one. Well, I'll jump right in there, because the example in Paris is Hype Taxi, which is getting a bit of government funding, but not a lot. They now have a viable economic ecosystem. It works. Between the manufacturers, Toyota, Hyundai, the producers, so on, from afar, that is something that has actually worked, because it is something that is a closed loop solution. With 2-3 stations, you can literally go from any airport in the center of the city. They're now, someone's probably going to correct me because I'm going to get the numbers wrong. I think 160 taxis out on the road already. They're going up to 600 for the Olympics, and it's something that is a great opportunity, and that's viable. It's going there, their total, as Michael mentioned, they're, with the bit of help from the manufacturers and leasing, they're getting to be cost parity on operational and in the price of hydrogen. That's something that you could then, every single VTC or taxi company in the world could replicate that model today, viable. So yes, there's been a lot of starts and stops. And again, maybe I'm repeating myself because they're very large projects spread over multiple distances. What I think is, when you have a small project or a fleet or opportunities, whether that's in boating or mobility, they are been proven today to be viable, and I don't see them going away. I just see them being more replicable. Okay, so Chloe, when we talked a little bit about, you had your company, Hynova, but you also decided to set up EFRA as a sort of that is a sort of a market-driven closed ecosystem. Is that not what you've done?
I'm so sorry, Garrett. I had a bad connection because a huge storm is coming.
Okay.
Lightning and stuff. So I'm so sorry. Could you repeat? Maybe,
so
please?
We had a question that came in from the audience about how can we create non-government market-based forces to drive hydrogen. And I wanted to not maybe talk about your company, but you're already doing this. You've created EFRA, a closed organization that is driven by market and need to bring actors together. Could you explain a little bit more about how you set up that organization to deliver on that non-government market-based approach to acceleration?
Actually, as every time, I start from the field and I go back in the solution. So I just realized that I needed to have an ecologically friendly solution. I realized that I need to have a simple operational solution. I realized also that we need to have a simple, not the cost, actually, it's not so important. In yachting, it's not the most important things for sure, because when you do the feel of the boat, it's just crazy how expensive is it. So it's not the point, but you just need the services with a simple approach. So that's why all the business model was thinking about that. So now I think, so now we need to showcase that it's work for sure. It's still in my mind. So next year it's going to be in reality. So with this full ecosystem with all including things, actually we don't really need the government and stuff because we paid for everything, or our clients paid for everything. We need to be completely independent. If you are waiting from subsidies and stuff, it's not coming. It's, for me, it's a plus. It's not, yeah, you know, so that's.
I mean, definitely, I think from John's question, the non-government market-based approach, it does seem to be either desperation or inspiration. We are seeing small mirrors of what you're suggesting are popping up all over, okay? If anything, it's our job. Maybe maybe as the European Union government, maybe we shouldn't necessarily be even trying to be in those groups. Maybe we should just stay away and not involve ourselves to not complicate their lives. That might be something that you know, free people up to come up with solutions. We have some, just so you know, there's been some wonderful things that we've seen. Some countries in Europe, I have seen a dispensing station with Linde as the provider, from request to permission to build to the first actual dispensing, 60 days. We were in shock, you know, but we had a conference and all these people from all over Central Europe were coming. We thought, my God, we have to do something. But it's amazing when the media and attention's coming, how fast they were able to approve everything that we needed, including the survey for the ground to bring on all the equipment and have that installed. So wonderful there. We've just got some comments here and from Wuppertal. They'll be having some of their buses and they've got hydrogenics that are working on there. So that's great comments. Obviously, there's work that's been done. Germany, of course, is a great leader. You know, when it comes to who's pushing in Europe for this, we do see Germany there. Michael, from your side, how do you feel that the German government and or the lender are helping you do your job? Or are you the same way? Just let us go and do what we need to do and we'll make a business answer. Do you see extra help?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm slightly different position than Chloe because her sector is predominant and still private users for the private individual needs. While the transportation sector of trucks, of course, has a certain public responsibility. At the end of the day, you're managing supply chains for groceries, which is a public sector. And if a grocery stuff is not in the supermarket in the morning, you have national riots in the long run. So I think it's that the truck sector needs some kind of public support. And I have to say the German government is fairly generous. So the subsidies you get when you purchase currently a hydrogen truck, and you go through the approval process. You have to go through the public approval process. You request the subsidies. The subsidies are currently probably the highest in Europe. So I think I wouldn't complain about that. It gives us definitely extra tailwind. Where we need the government for sure is the infrastructure. Like I said, the approval periods, the subsidies on the HRS, on the hydrogen service stations and filling stations. Okay. Because we need to build a public infrastructure. At the end of the day, whether it's the buses or the trucks, the majority of vehicles using hydrogen in regards of the quantity of hydrogen will be the commercial vehicles. There are lots of Toyota Mirais, but just give you an idea, Toyota Mirai needs 4 kilograms. Our trucks need 60 kilograms. So we need 15 times the amount of hydrogen, and our trucks refuel every day. So the infrastructure is an absolutely critical part. And that's where the government needs to support, because this is nothing the public sector can completely do by itself. I see in the comments, it's correct. Elon Musk did his infrastructure by himself. Mm-hmm. He was lucky because he was the first mover, and the stock markets were very generous to him at the time he needed that funding. And he also found some heavyweight investors. But I think for the bridging period, we need the government until the costs are where they need to be. I don't know, Chloe, what you pay today for the kilowatt of a fuel cell. Our prices are currently at around 1,000 euro per kilowatt fuel cell. We estimate the fuel cell costs come down to around about 200, 250 over the next 4 to 5 years, 6 years maybe. And then, you know, you can go into mass adaptation because you're competitive to diesel engines. For that bridge in between, until we scale, clearly we need that seed funding or seed investment, and also believe that fuel cells and hydrogen technology is something where in Europe, we can still protect a bit our continent and have domestic grown technologies. Because frankly speaking, on a battery electric side, we lost the market dominance completely to China, whether it's the e-motors, whether it's the battery cells. On hydrogen and fuel cells, we have still a chance at Europe to retain IP in Europe and retain some technology leaderships. I think that's also important that the government understands. If we don't want to be rolled over by China technology, we need to retain the technology advancement here in Europe.
Completely agree. I mean, we had the joy of being in BMW's center in Garching about 2 weeks ago, and it was wonderful to see one of our European leaders investing initially, you know, working with Toshiba on there, but actually going further in their own too, to see that we're actually starting to grab the need for technological independence to do that on our own. So Chloe, there's some questions about specifically what your production capacity is going to be. You open up on, I think it's mid-2024. That's when you're planning to open up. So what the production capacity is going to be, where is that initial depot going to be, the generation, and what you expect the cost per kilo to be? Do you have any estimates that have helped you and that you could share with us now?
Yes, sorry, but actually I decided to be not focusing in the price of hydrogen. You know, we decided because the first question with hydrogen, it's all the time, what's the cost? How do you produce? What's the size of the electrolyzer? Where the electricity comes from and stuff. So I make it simple. We have a 20-feet container. You have enough hydrogen on your boat, and you just need to pay a membership per month. So that means we're going to make money also in the production of hydrogen for sure, but it's in the full services. So it's the people don't pay with the credit card like 20 kilos of hydrogen. We only producing what we need. So we are completely able to produce hydrogen in function of the needs. So I mean, we have a small version for private property, for example, for just one boat. If you have, for example, Garrett, a huge villa with a pontoon in front of your house, we can bring the Ephira Station 1 in your garden, and you can produce your own hydrogen. It's 10 kilos per day, so it's a small electrolyzer. It's working with a normal how do you say, membership, electricity membership, you know, the normal one. After that, we can produce a bit more for 2 boats. And the next one, it's for 4 boats. We are able to produce 200 kilograms. We can store maximum 48 kilograms on the station. And we are doing also slow refueling bits. Why? Because you have the regulation aspect after that. You don't have to store more than 100 kilograms because after that you are in ICPE, so I don't know the name in English. Anyway, it's the environmental regulation. Anyway, so we are under all the hard regulation parts. So that's simple. You just have to know that you're gonna have your hydrogen full in the morning on your boat. So that's it. It's
no, wonderful. I mean, honestly, if we can see commercially minded, business-orientated solutions, and I'm seeing that's what Quantron and Mark that you're working on, and it seems to be you're getting it done. Knowing that.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Are you deploying liquid or gaseous hydrogen?
Gasoline. We storage on the station at 500 bars, and it's in 300 in the boat, not 350, 300. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
gas.
It's wonderful to see that you're all making it happen. Okay, so Miriam, I'm aware that we're 5 minutes before close, and I wanted to hand back to you as our host today from Monaco Hydrogen Alliance. Yep.
Yes, I am back. So thank you all very much. Thank you to our dear panelists. That was a very important discussion on the need to continue scaling infrastructure. And it's very interesting to have the regulatory aspect, the technological and innovative aspect, but of course, the more physical infrastructures, what is needed. I'm sure our audience were engaged. We were delighted to have you. It was a great pleasure. Looking forward to welcoming you all. As discussed in our upcoming events, we will keep mobility and renewable hydrogen at the center, with, of course, a great focus on innovation, infrastructure, and investment. So thank you all again very much. Thank you, Gareth. Thank you, Chloe, Mark, Michael. It was a great pleasure, and looking forward to having you in our coming discussions.
Thank you.
Have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.